You are listening to Verbal Minute, where words do remain.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the podcast series Right the Wrongs. Every Wednesday and Saturday, Right the Wrongs raises public awareness on pressing human rights issues and creates an incubator of activism. Today, we will be discussing domestic violence, a silent pandemic that has been on the rise globally ever since quarantine measures against COVID-19 trapped the vulnerable with their abusive partners. First of all, domestic abuse, also referred to as domestic violence or intimate partner violence, is not defined the same way legally or colloquially in different countries. The United Nations cites a definition of domestic abuse as a pattern of behavior in any relationship that is used to gain or maintain power and control over an intimate partner. Abuse is physical, sexual, emotional, economic, or psychological actions or threats of actions that influence another person. This includes any behavior that threaten, intimidate, terrorize, manipulate, hurt, humiliate, blame, injure, or wound someone. Domestic abuse can happen to anyone of any race, age, sexual orientation, religion, or gender. It can also affect people of all socioeconomic backgrounds and education levels. Such abuse can occur within a range of relationships, including couples who are married, living together, or dating. Meanwhile, victims of domestic abuse may also include a child or any other household member. Incidents are rarely isolated and usually escalate in frequency and severity, and may culminate in serious physical injury or death. Unsurprisingly, the victims of domestic abuse are predominantly female. For instance, in the UK, data published in 2018 shows that for every 3 victims of domestic abuse, 2 will be female. 1 in 4 women suffer from domestic abuse in their lifetime, while 1 in 6 to 7 men do. Estimates published by WHO indicate that globally, about 1 in 3, or 30% of women, have been subjected to either physical and/or sexual intimate partner violence or non-partner sexual violence in their lifetime. Among the many ways that COVID-19 has wreaked havoc across the globe, it has become clear that the current sanitary crisis set the stage for an increase in domestic and intra-family violence. Isolation, stay-at-home measures, and restricted mobility to contain the spread of the virus have a particularly acute impact on women. As early as the beginning of April 2020, the UN issued an alert on the increasing incidence of violence against women worldwide. In France, the incidence of violence against women is estimated to have increased by 30% during the first round of containment. At national level, the number of police interventions for familial discord has increased significantly during containment. Other countries like Brazil, Italy, Spain, China, and Singapore also reported a surge in the number of domestic violence cases following the onset of the pandemic last year. Physical confinement has stripped the vulnerable of the precious privacy and mobility needed to report cases of violence, which means even more victims are silenced, in addition to those who do not voice up due to the fear of stigmatization or punishment. Moreover, gender inequality in the legal domain further exposes women to a disproportionately more vulnerable position to abuse. According to the World Bank, 49 countries do not have any specific law against domestic violence, and 112 countries do not criminalize marital rape. Women are more likely to tolerate domestic abuse in countries with fewer legal provisions against domestic violence, which reinforces the legalization of sex-based inequality. As the lockdown measures virtually muted the cries for help from victims of domestic violence, Many suggested that contingency plans and emergency legislations need to be put in place to support women and children in such vulnerable situations. However, such efforts remain insufficient and passive. In many countries, the share of domestic violence reports filed by third parties, like friends, neighbours, or even pedestrians, have been on the rise. This reminds us of our civic responsibilities in such exceptional times to watch out for one another and think like a community. For those in France, the 3919 hotline teamed up with the ride-hailing company Uber, which has promised to provide 2,000 free rides to help transport victims of domestic abuse. The government is also expected to provide partial financing for victims of domestic violence to find accommodation elsewhere, away from their abusive households. Let us stay vigilant for the pandemic of domestic abuse, which will inevitably take us longer to eradicate than COVID-19. That's the end of today's episode on domestic violence. Feel free to engage with us on Facebook and Instagram, and join us for further discussions on our Telegram group, or leave us a comment at theverbemannenspodcast@gmail.com. This episode was written and produced by Tanfei and brought to you by Right the Wrongs and The Verbamanent. The next episode of Right the Wrongs will be the second part under the topic of pornography. You can find the program wherever you find your podcasts, bringing you detailed updates on pressing human rights issues. Till next time, take care.